Those at Fpdr know, let the board know too. I'm a little under the weather, so if I'm my usual mediocre at best self at this, you'll understand why. But we'll do our best to kind of go through the business that we need to get through. There's three things we really need to cover primarily. But first, I will take a motion around the minutes from the last meeting.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from the last meeting. This is Jason.
Hi, Jason. This is Kathy, and I second that motion.
Great. Motion made by Jason, approved, seconded by Kathy. Any objections? Seeing none, the motion is approved and the minutes are approved. Sam, I'm going to pass it back to you, I think, for the introduction of our new board member.
Okay, we had a new board member, so we sent out nominations for to be elected as the police trustee. Chris was the only one lucky enough, I think, to nominate himself. So Chris, by default, becomes the new police trustee. So Chris, you want to just give a quick, brief bio of yourself for everybody?
Absolutely. Chris Cole. I've been a police officer 25 years, the last 20 of which was with Portland. I'm a Sagittarius, married, 3 kids. That's about it. I look forward to learning about all this stuff. Stacy's brought me up to speed on a lot of stuff already, but eager to learn.
Good.
Very nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Kathy and Jason, you want to do a quick introduction of yourselves for Chris?
Oh, Jason, go ahead.
Hi, Chris. I'm Jason Lehman. I'm the fire trustee. Been on the board for a number of years, so welcome.
Thank you.
Forward to working with you.
And I'm Catherine McLeod. I go by Kathy, and I'm a citizen trustee. I'm an actuary by career, so I've got some exposure to some of the subject matter involved here, and I've been on the board for several years. So
excellent. Pleasure.
Welcome aboard, Chris. I'll be reaching out to you some more because we're going to have to get you up and trained a little bit more on what it is to be a trustee. So expect some emails or calls from me.
Excellent. I look forward to them.
Hey, Chris, I'm Josh Harwood. I serve as a city economist primarily in my day job. I'm the mayor's designee as chair of the board. Welcome. And you're in the right hands with Stacy. She'll get you up to speed on just about everything. So our best and crank through it, but welcome to the board.
Thank you.
All righty. Kathy, do we have any visitors and or public comments?
No, we have none today. Thank you.
All righty. Then let's move on to action item number 1. Everybody but Chris will recall, this is the annual adjustment review where we make a call relative to the COLA for next year. There's no binding sort of ongoing obligation, but we were hoping to have full board. We got pretty close, and we need to make a decision though today, I believe. Otherwise, we're approaching into the time when it actually gets applied. So, Stacy, or Sam, I'll turn it over to you, and then we can. I think the rest of us are relatively up to the speed on the matter, but let's get a quick review, and then we can go from there.
Sure. Stacy Jones, the Fpdr Finance and Pension Manager and Deputy Director, I guess too, I have many titles. So we did include in your packet the materials that the rest of the board, not including Trustee Culp, already got back in March on the COLA decision. Reminder, this is just the annual cost of living adjustment decision that the board makes for FPDR 2 trustees, which are those folks who were still working in 1991 or were hired after that for the most part. So back in March, you decided that you wanted to defer the vote until the May board meeting when the police trustee could hopefully be present and participate. So we're extra glad that you're here, Trustee Culp. That paid off, and here you are. So in March, there was lots of discussion among the trustees, but there weren't any requests for additional or different information. So I haven't added anything new to what you saw in March. And since I've had a chance to kind of bring Trustee Culp up to speed on what you all saw in March, as well as the history of the COLA, I'm not going to go back over any of that material today unless someone has a question about a particular part or wants to revisit some of that information. But I do think it might be helpful, just as a jumping off place, if I try to sum up where I think we left things back in March. And you all can correct me if my memory is faulty, although we, of course, we also have the minutes if we need to refer back to those. And folks may have changed their thinking in the last 2 months. But just a quick summary, I'll do one for each trustee. Trustee Lyman advocated for the maximum allowable COLA, which is 2% for all. That's the most that you guys can give per city charter, because that's the maximum COLA that PERS gives. Trustee Lyman really wanted to emphasize that most retirees don't receive Social Security, just an FPDR pension and whatever they've saved themselves through deferred compensation, the city's deferred compensation program, or any other means. He really wanted to discontinue, although we have this historic connection to the PERS COLA methodology and the connection, and that we can't give a larger COLA than PERS gives its sworn retirees, really wanted to discontinue the past approach of comparing the FPDR COLA or modeling the FPDR COLA off of the PERS COLA. He felt that continuing to base our COLA approach on a PERS method that was designed to address PERS problems, which for the most part are problems we don't have, that is just no longer appropriate. And he also felt that we could afford to give the maximum COLA because recent levy analyses have shown that we have a very low probability of hitting the levy cap, which is that $2.80 per $1,000 of real market value, that there was a low probability of hitting that cap at any point in the next 20 years. Trustee McLeod said that she leaned toward the more generous options, I think was how you put it, and that you didn't think we needed to consider the least generous options like the current PERS methodology. You also said that you personally liked the old PERS method, which is the method that the FPDR board and PERS used until 2015 for several decades, which this year would give 2% to everyone except current year retirees, and current year retirees in that method would get inflation, which is 1.74% for the period we're talking about. And then Chair Harwood, and I'll let you guys chime in and correct or add. So let me just, Chair Harwood, the main thing I wrote down here was that Chair Harwood wanted to point out that even if there is a low probability of hitting the levy cap, that's not the only or even the most important property tax consideration, that higher COLAs result in higher property taxes, even if they're not high enough to hit the cap. And we have some responsibility to consider taxpayer impacts. So from there, I'll let the three of you add or correct anything that I've said, or clarify your thinking, and turn it over to the board.
I'll just start. Thanks, Stacy. I think you covered everything I said. For some reason, you called me Trustee Lyman, though. I've never said that before. So as you remember, it's Lyman.
It was not Freudian in any way. I don't know where
that's okay.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, that's okay. No problem. We misspoke sometime. So yeah, thank you very much for that synopsis, and that's how I feel about it. Thank you.
Is there anything that anyone wants to add that they feel like hasn't been put out there, or?
I'll go back. I'm trying to refresh my memory here on what we were saying. So thanks for that recap. I do tend to I agree with Trustee Lyman that I think the relevance of the new PERS methodology, while I think that the evidence of what the difference is could be meaningful in terms of understanding how tier 3 members might be getting a different COLA than tier 2 would be getting. Other than that, I don't consider that there's any relevance between the PERS methodology, the new PERS methodology, and what we want to do. Because again, theirs was budget, constrained by budget and other matters that don't apply here. So I too agree with Trustee Lehman's earlier comments that is not relevant to our decision. Why it might be interesting information to know how things relate, I don't think it feels relevant to our decision at all. I'm just going to make a comment that I think I understand the flexibility we have. By and large, for the variety of reasons we discussed last time, my inclination is to go toward the 2% COLA maximum available in this year for a variety of reasons. A little bit is simplicity. Some of it is in recognition of the challenging year that's been, we've just come out of, and that it would be helpful and meaningful for people to have a COLA at this 2% level. And the fact that it's not too different from the other new retirees. If we went with a straight inflation at 1.74, it's not appreciably different from that. So my inclination right now is to go with the 2% recommended COLA. Other comments from anybody else?
Chris here. I would.
Go ahead. Nope, go ahead.
I was going to agree on the 2%, but I had a question. We cannot change what the current year retirees get, right? They get inflation no matter what.
No, so I'll answer that question. No, you can. You can give 2% to everyone. It was the old method that we used, for decades before PERS changed it, that had this kind of unusual quirk, because it kind of had that banking. I don't know if you remember us talking briefly about that banking mechanism that would bring you up to 2% if inflation was below 2%.
Right.
But since they just retired, they don't have anything in their bank. So if we were using the old PERS method, they wouldn't get 2%. But it is absolutely within the authority of the board to just give 2% to everyone. And the board has done that before as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah, Stacey, you summarized my admittedly brief point pretty well. I don't disagree with anything anybody said, and I think I see where this is headed. So I'm not going to put up a big stink. I just think that we should have some obligation to individual taxpayers, and thinking about the best way to go about it. This also is sort of, the inflation calculation is imperfect, and so I don't know that we should put too much money or too much stock in the difference between 1.74% and 2%. So I'm disinclined to make a big stink about that as well. So I'm happy if there's more discussion for people to have it. Otherwise, I can take a motion too. I don't know. I don't want to prejudge it, and I don't want to jump the gun. But at the same time, if people are pretty confident where they're at, I don't need to belabor the point either.
I'm sensing some unanimity. So I was going to make a motion that we approve a COLA for tier 2 retirees of 2%.
I'll second that motion.
All right. Any objections to the motion? All right. Motion passes. Stacey, Sam, you guys have what you need?
Yep, that's all I need.
Okay.
So we will give a 2% COLA to all tier 2 Fpdr 2 retirees. It'll be effective July 1st, 2021, which is what I understood the board to mean in their motion. And that means that retirees, if any are watching, you'll see it in your benefit with your August 1st payment, which is for your July benefit.
And this is probably a good point to make the point. I hope everybody's okay with it, to simply say that this is not indicative of any future decisions the board may make. This is a decision for this year only.
Agreed.
I'd like to, if I could, you kind of alluded that we need to think about the individual taxpayers and the property tax, and I 100% agree with that. But I also believe that, we all wear different hats, so we know what's going on everywhere else in the city, some of us. But in this, wearing this hat in this venue, I think our fund is funded well. It's handled well. I think FP&R does a great job. And I think if they come back with information in the future that shows that giving this type of COLA could be detrimental to fund, we'll absolutely address that the way we should, and we'll be addressing it with the taxpayers in mind. But I believe that we're doing really good, and I really appreciate everybody's work on this. So thank you.
Good point. All right, let's move on to action item number 2, our TANs offering, tax anticipation notes. I'll let Stacey go through some of the details. The very simple explanation, I think, of these, and Stacey, correct me if I'm wrong, is simply that when we get the revenue does not match when the expenses go out the door. And so we need to borrow on a short-term basis in order to have the money and the cash to get out the door to the retirees until the money comes in from the county for property taxes. We actually end up making a little bit of money typically on this through an arbitrage situation that Stacey can talk about in detail, but that's sort of the 10,000 foot view of the decision we're making now just to endorse it. I think it's on council calendar, is it not?
Yeah, second reading is tomorrow. So council
Second reading is
will.
tomorrow. That's what I thought.
So,
Okay.
Yep. So
Go ahead,
council,
Stacey, take it away.
Yep, I just wanted to make sure that the board approved the issue before council approved the issue. So if you folks approve it today, council will approve it tomorrow. It had first reading last week with no questions or concerns. So this is, like Josh said, Josh has it exactly right. This is just our very routine annual tax anticipation note issue. I'll give just a little more detail for the benefit of Trustee Culp, although we did talk about it a little bit last week. So we rely almost entirely on our dedicated property tax levy to fund all of our planned benefits. And as Chair Harwood said, although the fiscal year starts on July 1st, we don't receive most of our property tax revenue until mid-November, which puts us in the embarrassing situation of literally running out of money not very far into July. So every year we borrow money to bridge that gap by issuing tax anticipation notes. Notes, that's just the word for short-term bonds, usually bonds that last less than 12 months. We call them tax anticipation notes because, you know, lots of governments issue them in anticipation of receiving tax revenue in the fall, with which we will pay back our bond holders. And as Chair Harwood also mentioned, in addition to this just being necessary from a cash flow perspective, this has always been fortuitously advantageous for the fund because we have always had positive arbitrage, which means that we make more in interest on the funds which we put in the city investment pool than we have to pay out in interest to the note holders. On average, we earn around 50 basis points, which is about 0.5% more in the city investment pool than we pay in interest on the TANs. And I'm highly confident that will be the case again next year. I was not highly confident about that last year, although that did turn out to be the case. But this year I'm confident that we'll have positive arbitrage, and I think we might be able to do even a little bit better than our usual 0.5%. The city debt manager thinks that we'll probably wind up with interest of about 1/3% on our issue. And the city investment officer's current forecast assumes we'll earn 0.4% on our funds, but he always, projects a little low. I think we'll earn more than that next year. So I think we'll be in that similar position. The only other thing I'd point out is that the budget that the board approved back in January allowed for up to 60.5 million in tax anticipation notes. But now that we're closer to actually issuing them, I think we're only going to need about 40 million. So in response to Trustee Lehman's past concerns that he has had about authorizing the full budgeted amount when we probably didn't need the full budgeted amount, this year I am going to just ask you to authorize 45 million rather than that full budgeted amount of 60.5 million. That still gives me some wiggle if anything unexpected crops up between now and when we issue in July, but I'm pretty sure we're going to need about 40 million. So 45 million is what the resolution, what I'm asking you to authorize in the resolution today. I mean, other than that, I'll just answer questions if there are any.
I had one question, Stacey. I had one of my members, the Fire Bureau, sent me an email, and they'd noticed something on the agenda a while back for City Council, and it was, I assume it's part of this, but it says authorize a borrowing of not more than 60,470,000 in anticipation of Fpdr fund levy for 21-22. So has it already been brought to council on some level?
So it had its first reading last Wednesday. So, but they don't vote on the first reading. And then second reading is tomorrow. So council will approve it. Hopefully they'll approve it tomorrow after you guys approve it today.
So they'll change it from 60 million to 45?
No, the city debt manager will still be constrained to the 45 million because you both have to authorize, but they're in charge of submitting the ordinance and they always submit the budgeted amount, and they are not interested in submitting less than the budgeted amount.
Okay.
I just said, well, okay, but my board doesn't want to authorize more than they think they'll need. So, but they'll be constrained by the lower number, which will be the 45 million that you guys have approved.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you.
that's interesting. Thanks for explaining that.
Mhm.
Any other discussion?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion then.
I'll make a motion to, was it resolution 534? Is that the one?
Think so?
Do pass recommendation of resolution 534 as presented.
I'll second the motion.
Are there any objections to that motion? Seeing none, the motion passes. Stacy, again, you have everything you need, I think?
Yeah, we have what we need. Thank you all.
All righty. All right, we have one more action item dealing with the Office of Administrative Hearings in the Employment Department around an IGA. I assume this is Sam, but who wants to present it real quick?
Yeah, it's me here. So I'll walk you through what we're looking to do. Per the charter, Fpdr is required to retain independent hearing officers to conduct hearings and appellate reviews of contested claims or pension issues. We've been working with OAH, Office of Administrative Hearings, since I believe about 2007. The present intergovernmental agreement, or IGA, was effective in written 4 years ago, and it will terminate here on June 30, 2021. So what we've done in the past is look at there other organizations or entities that can provide this same service. We did not do that this year because the 2 times we've done it before, we've shown there is no other organization that can provide both administrative law judges as well as other appellate panels to review these types of claims. And so we've made the decision that we're going to continue with OAH, assuming you all approve with it. So OAH has agreed to extend this for another 4 years through June 30, 2025. And the last agreement we had, which expires, had a not to exceed amount of $400,000. We're only going to increase that by $225,000. So the not to exceed is $625,000. This is the concept of not to exceed for the type of contract we have. We rarely, if ever, will hit that amount because we just don't spend $625,000 on this. Rather, this is a fee for service agreement, which means we only pay when services are OAH services are used. And interestingly, in this situation, their services are only used when a member appeals a disability claim denial or a pension issue. So the initiation of the service does not come from OAH or from Fpdr as such. We do have funds because this is budgeted and we continue to budget that amount. So there's no additional budget for doing this. And you can see attached, or I think sent you in an email, was Exhibit A, which shows you the contract renewal with it. It has been approved by the State of Oregon Department of Justice as well as OAH. So if you all approve it, we'll go ahead and sign it. This being an intergovernmental agreement does not need to go through City Council. We have the power to sign that agreement with no further approvals. So what we're doing is requesting you to authorize us to basically sign Exhibit A, extend the contract out for another 4 years, raising the not to exceed amount by $625,000, and also give me permission to go ahead and authorize payment to OAH for any fees or services incurred. Any questions on that?
Sam, you may have said it, but if you did, I did not process it. Can you tell me roughly what the expenditures were during the prior contract period?
Since the contract period is still open and we're about 3 or 4 months in arrears to pay it, I'm going to estimate about $275,000 for that. So if you go another 275, that takes us up to about 550, and then gives us sort of a contingency of what 75,000, I think, for that, just in case.
Okay, and my second question is, and I have no reason to second guess your feelings about the suitability of the services that they have provided and their ability to continue to provide, but what other alternatives would be available in terms of providing this service?
What other alternatives? In essence, none. You could have at what they call the hearing level is a single ALJ or single attorney. You could potentially find single attorneys that could serve in that role. The challenge is those attorneys would have would be work from the workers' compensation realm. And so they either come from the employer representative or the employee representative. So the issue is, how do you get them to put away their biases and look at both without putting their lens on for where they're coming now? That's a little bit of a challenge. The part that we can't get is the appellate, which we need a 3-judge panel. And in doing that, there's also quite a bit of structure of how to run that and do that. There is no organization that offers that type of service. OAH does that routinely for all their customers, having appellate review panels. So it just fell right into their mode. So they have the ability to offer us 3 ALJs that serve in the appellate review, and then they have the full infrastructure to support the appellate panel.
Okay, so overall, would you say that FPDR staff and the members that are dealing with some sort of issue to be resolved are mutually satisfied with this OAH as the provider of these services, as much so would be with somebody else?
The challenge you always have with the members, if they don't like the decision OAH makes, is are they for it? But Nelson Hall is the one that represents most of the employees who appeal. And so Franco, do you want to sort of answer that for yourself? Because Franco represents FPDR in front of them. So Franco, do you want to put in your 2 cents worth on this?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I've been handling the cases with OAH since probably early 2008 for most of the time. I can say, just for contrast, I was in private practice for several years before doing this. So I appeared in front of the workers' comp division, administrative law judges. You're not losing any expertise or anything by using the state Office of Administrative Hearings. They hear all kinds of cases. And the appellate panel, Sam alluded to it, but another challenge is the charter does call for set terms for each appellate panel judge and that they be staggered. So in some sense, unwinding, I think as a practical matter, there's no other alternative, but I would say that I think OAH has been a very good party to contract with to handle these cases in terms of the quality of the analysis that you get, the way that the hearings are handled, the deadlines for issuing the orders. I've never seen an order issue late from an administrative law judge in this system, and they have 30 days. So it's a pretty tight turnaround. And I would say the same for the appellate panel. I think sometimes we might disagree with an outcome, but I can't think of a single case where I didn't think it was fair, the way that a case went. So it's a little bit maybe unsavory to say, well, there's no alternative, but I will say in this instance, we've been very well served. So that's the good news.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Franco.
Any more discussion?
No.
Okay, thanks for asking that question about alternatives, Kathy. I was thinking the same thing. So thanks for you guys' responses as well. I guess we'll entertain a motion now.
I'll move to approve resolution 535 and the extension and fee maximum for OAH.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Okay. Motion made by trustee McLeod, and seconded by trustee Lehman. Any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes. Sam, do you have everything you need for that?
Yes, I do.
Great.
Sign it and put it in effect.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. Informational items. We'll kick it back to the FPDR staff. Anything you guys have to share with us?
Sure. I'll do the first 2, Sam. I think
Yes.
they're summary of expenditures and the mayor's proposed budget. So for the expenditure report that you all have in front of you, everything really looks as expected for this time of year. I mean, you can definitely see the under collection and miscellaneous revenue at this point in the year that we talked about in January. In that category, it's mostly from interest income being lower than what we budgeted at this time last year. We didn't expect interest rates to tank as much as they did, but nothing surprising, and everything we're seeing in the budget is really identical to what we talked about when we talked about the current year and the upcoming year budget back in January. But are there any questions about the expenditure report? All right, hearing none. Of course, you can always send them to me anytime. So I did want to update the board on the budget briefly, which I don't always do. It kind of depends on the year. But the board approved our budget back in January for the upcoming fiscal year, which will begin on July 1st, 2021 and end on June 30, 2022. And the board has exclusive authority to approve the budget. But sometimes you always approve the budget with the understanding that technical changes may be necessary at a later stage in the process. And those are only made to align our budget with other bureaus' budgets where their budgets change. And that's because, City Council has budget authority over the rest of the city's bureaus, and they make changes to other bureaus' budgets, particularly the police and fire budgets that will impact us. So they really are just technical changes for us, but if they reach a certain magnitude, I just like to make the board aware of them. And we did have one this year. So we are going to increase our PERS contribution budget by about $250,000 for next fiscal year, and likewise the tax levy. And that is because the police bureau got some one-time funding in the mayor's proposed budget, which was then approved by council in the approved budget. They haven't adopted it yet. They don't usually change between approval and adoption. They got some one-time funding to accelerate hiring to fill some of their vacancies. It will allow them to hire about 30 additional officers. And then we will, of course, have to fund the PERS contributions for those officers, at least for part of the year, as soon as they get them hired. So I did want to let the board know about that change to the budget. Any questions?
Thank you. I do. So that's essentially a partial year contribution for new hires.
Yep, exactly.
Is that in keeping with whatever normal cost rate they assess for the year? I mean,
yep.
Or did you just have a blanket $250,000 you wanted to contribute?
Nope. So we go in and actually cost out, like they give us when they think they're going to hire those 30 people because it's staggered. They don't think they're all going to come in. They're just estimating. We don't pay PERS contributions for the first 6 months unless they're coming in with PERS service credit, but we assume that they're not. And then we start them at the entry rate and we apply the PERS contribution rate and the IEP rate. So we try to be very, very precise about it, and it comes out to be like $247,989. And then I just round it up to 250 because I hate to give the impression of false precision, precision where it doesn't fully exist.
Yes. Okay.
So hopefully that kind of explains where that number comes from.
It does. Thank you.
And everything, as with all things hiring related, the Fire Bureau never has any trouble hiring the positions they say they're going to hire. But the Police Bureau sometimes has a capacity problem at hiring folks. And so these are 30 officers in addition to about 40 that they already were planning on hiring. So that would be a pretty fast hiring pace next year. So there is risk that they can't get all 70 of those folks hired over the next 15 months or so. I know they're going to try though.
A follow-up question to that. I think I've asked this before, but I honestly can't remember the answer. So suppose that you make this $250,000 additional contribution, which is your best estimate at this point, a reasonable estimate of funding for new employees for this first period. Suppose that they are not successful in hiring all these people. And so the actual cost to PERS is less, but you've already remitted the funds, presumably. Or do you not remit it until they're actually hired?
No, we don't pay a dime actually until, so the PERS contributions go to PERS as part of the city payroll process.
Okay, great.
So it's based on actual. So we just have that money sitting there in the budget. It's all ready. But if we don't need it, we don't spend it. A dime doesn't go out the door, and then we have it available for next year.
Perfect, because it was my recollection that FPDR does not have its unfunded liability specifically isolated in a way that if you contribute more, that you're going to get to have that on hand for the future. So you don't want to send it. Got it.
Nope. I'm not giving them a penny more than I have to.
Got it. Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Stacy.
Okay, so I'll jump in here. So legislative updates, we're about a month away or less than that, a few weeks away from when the Oregon legislature legislative session ends. So we've got an update on a couple bills. We've been watching quite a few bills, and at this point we're boiled down to two that will impact FPDR. The first one is House Bill 2915. It's a firefighter heart-lung presumption, which I believe we've gone over before. It was actually presented last year, but didn't get through due to some walkout by the Republicans. So this bill this year has passed both the House and the Senate. It's awaiting the governor's signature, and it will become effective when the governor signs, which could be logistically anything from about 7 to 10 days up to the last possible day of July 27th. So maybe up to 10 weeks. What we'll do in the next board meeting is I'll walk you through this presumption a little better to understand what it is and how it impacts the fund and how it benefits the firefighters. The second bill is House Bill 2560. Right now, all governing bodies are allowed to have remote meetings, just like what we're doing here. Eventually, that will change and governing bodies will go back to public in-person meetings. But House Bill 2560 will still allow the public to participate in a live meeting remotely, which in the past has not been done, meaning that they can submit oral and written testimony electronically. Oral testimony be like we'd have a Zoom link somehow and present a picture of people on Zoom as the public presents their testimony. So this has passed the House. It's awaiting a Senate floor vote. I haven't seen the vote scheduled yet. There's no reason to think it won't pass the Senate. And all that will mean is when we do finally go back into the city council chambers, there'll be a method that we can allow people to come in by Zoom. Since this will apply to other organizations, city council and a few other boards in the city, there'll be a mechanism set up. So we'll have all the mechanics set up for that. With that, so those are the only two that I think are going to impact us now. Some bills of interest that did not become law, they've already been pushed off the table and will not advance. One is the House Bill 3025 and its companion Senate Bill 488. They're the COVID presumption bills. They're worded very similar to the Fpdr COVID administrative rules that you all approved last year and have been in effect since March of last year. The big difference between the state statute and our rules is the state statute basically covers 45% of all state employees. It did have the same equal to our clear or convincing level of presumption. The level of presumption and the number of state employees covered were huge roadblocks, and the sponsors of the bills couldn't overcome those two things. And so the bills made no progress. The second one is Senate Bill 802, which is, I call it the secondary effects COVID presumption. This would be for people who did not have a COVID related disability now, but maybe in a year or two, they come up with a respiratory issue, and it's thought that their exposure to COVID in 2020, for example, led to that respiratory condition they have, and that would fall under this, and they would therefore get the clear and convincing level of presumption. There are a lot of problems with this bill that was written. One, it had a 30-year look back period, meaning somebody in 2050 could say, oh, gee, this pneumonia I've got now is a result of the COVID exposure I had 30 years ago in 2020. That just didn't pass a smell test for a lot of people. Plus, there were some other poorly written parts of the bill, so it didn't go anywhere. There's House Bill 2596, which was, I'm calling it the firefighter any cancer presumption. Presently, in Oregon workers' comp, which there is a firefighter cancer presumption, and it does apply to FPDR, and it has a list of cancers. What they wanted to do is basically throw out the list and say any cancer of, literally any cancer that a firefighter had would be presumed to be work-related. I think there was an attempt, because there's a couple other conditions that are showing up of cancers, some that are being caused by that firefighter cancer or firefighter foam issue, some cancers caused by that. And I got a feeling somebody said, instead of adding these 1 or 2 cancers to this list, just let's add all cancer. Again, I think that was too big of a step. And so that bill didn't go anywhere. I think if they could have maybe pinned it down to 1 or 2 additional cancers, it might have gotten some traction. The next one, House Bill 3047, it deals with Oregon Public Records Law. Somebody proposed an amendment that I had been fighting for 3 or 4 sessions now. And the background to this is that PERS retirees' personal information is by statute exempt from disclosure. Therefore, you cannot get a PERS retiree's home address, their phone numbers, or anything like that released. Unfortunately, that exemption does not apply to FPDR retirees. We treated FPDR retiree information as if it is exempt from disclosure, but I'm really worried about it, that at some point it goes up and gets appealed, we'll lose on appeal. So I have been pushing to add FPDR retirees to get the same level of coverage that PERS retirees get. So that went in an amendment this year. I was excited moving through. The bill passed committee, but they did not pass the amendment. So we're back to status quo. The positive to this is that it has this and a couple other tweaks to the records exemptions will probably be represented at the next legislative session. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it is. So that's where we are with the legislative updates. Any questions from anybody on those? Okay, let's jump down to FPDR updates. I have some good news here. FPDR, it's about the citizen trustee vacancy here. FPDR and then Commissioner Hardesty's office launched a search to find some citizens that would be interested to become an FPDR board trustee. And we were able to find one, and per the process in the charter, that nominee has to go to the mayor's office for confirmation of the nominee, and then the nominee is presented to the city council for approval. I just got permission less than a half hour ago to give you the name of the person that has been passed on to the mayor's office, because the mayor has just confirmed they will pass this individual's name on to city council for approval. It's James Juan. He's an attorney with Standard Insurance Company. So Catherine, you've got your attorney that you had requested last time.
There we go.
He has 20 years as an attorney. He's worked for a couple different companies, all providing a lot on investment advice, retirement, and welfare benefit advice with that. So he has a background. I'll share with you his bio and his resume tomorrow. I'll send it out in email so you can get a full look at his background on that. I've confirmed that he will go in front of the city council on June 7th for accepting his nomination, and there should be no reason why they would not accept it. So we will have a person, the 5th trustee, available at our next board meeting in July. And so then transitioning to my next agenda item, which is future board meetings. So on July, we have just probably only 2 things on the agenda. One is to meet James Juan, and second is some administrative rule amendments that go alongside with the heart-lung presumption. So we have to just put it into the rules that we're going to follow the heart-lung presumption statute. Excuse me. Those are the only 2 agenda items. If there aren't anything bigger, you know, should we have the July meeting or not? We've canceled it the last 2 years. We'll wait till the end of June, first part of July, and I'll talk with Josh if we want to hold those 2 items over to September, or if there's anything else with that. September 28th, we'll have state of FPDR. We didn't do it last year, so we'll do it this year and cover 2 years of information plus additional, looking back. We will have, again, if we don't do the administrative rule amendments in July, we will do them in September. Typically, we have some other business that will pop up by then. There is the possibility that if we chose, we could have the meeting in the council chambers. And again, I'll talk with Josh as this comes closer to figure out what the city and the state's view is on holding public meetings with it. The next one after that is November 16th. We're going to present to you quite a few contract approvals. So they all seem to end at the end of this year. 2 of them are technical contracts that revolve around supporting and maintaining our database, which contains all our information used to pay and approve disability claims and pension benefits. Then we also have our managed care organizations. Those will be up, and we could have anywhere from 2 to 3 contracts for you to approve at that point. We're all starting the RFP processes on those now. Once you approve them, then the next thing is we have to get them in front of council. A couple of them I think are large enough that council will have to approve with that. And in November, I believe the expectation is that all public boards and parts of the city government will conduct meetings in person. So likely we'll be back in the council chambers at that time. Any questions about what's coming up or the future meetings?
I had a question.
Sure.
And this comes from another one of our members, and is wondering if FPDR has or plans on applying or requesting funds from the federal government for some of the COVID money that you've had to procure and give out to our members. Is there any avenue to get some of that money back from the federal government?
It hasn't come up because the requirements for what comes out from the federal government is they don't reimburse workers' compensation payments for COVID. And so they've not come up, and the workers' compensation has not discussed it in the state either. They just don't, it doesn't fall under their criteria for reimbursement.
Oh, okay.
I think the city might be able to, because the city's been doing the vaccines, et cetera. So there may be opportunities for them to do it, but not to recover workers' compensation benefits. It's not covered under any of the federal funding.
How about the replacement costs? Like if somebody has to be off work, is that considered workers' compensation benefits if it's their actually the pay they would have been receiving for even some of the quarantine people? Or
well, if you're looking for the Fire Bureau to recover some of their budget, for hiring for the overtime and those costs, that would have to go through the city. And so I'm not familiar how that would be done. That wouldn't come through workers' comp. That would be just general COVID costs.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the fund paid for the wages while people were being quarantined on some level. Is that not correct?
Yeah, but that would fall under any money that we paid out would be considered under workers' compensation, be treated like workers' comp, and workers' compensation is not being reimbursed by federal funds.
Well, there's the two different sides, Trustee Lehman. There's us paying a firefighter's wages, essentially, disability benefits to replace wages while they're quarantined or recovering from COVID. And that's a workers' compensation benefit. That's our workers' compensation substitute benefit. Then there's the money that the Fire Bureau had to pay out to someone on an overtime shift to cover that firefighter's shift. And that money, I don't know if that's reimbursable or not, but that would be something that Jay Guo over in your fiscal department would be in charge of trying to get back. And he may have submitted a request for that. I don't know though.
Okay. What about is everything that comes out considered workers' comp benefits? Let's say even interim benefits when you pay those. Is that considered a workers' comp benefit? It's probably academic, makes complete sense to you, but I'm just trying to.
Anything that's paid under our disability plan, which interim benefits are all the COVID presumptions, including paying, while people were in quarantine, that would all be classified as workers' compensation.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Jason, I can answer a little bit too from the city perspective about where things are. Because the Fire Bureau is a general fund bureau and it's funded out of the general resources that fund a whole handful of bureaus across the city. We are, and it's forward looking. So we've lost some, and it's called revenue replacement from our perspective and from the federal government's perspective. So we lost some revenue as a result of COVID. We can replace that revenue going forward. It's less a reimbursement sort of situation. So it allows us to maintain programs that we otherwise might have had to cut or lose, both this year, next year, and the year after. And we will get reimbursed for those, but essentially it's set up looking forward, not looking back necessarily in terms of a grant program. Like a few years ago, I know the Fire Bureau had a grant program to fund 26 firefighters, but that was a very specific grant to the Fire Bureau, and they would be reimbursed through federal government. This is a more general program from the federal government that we're using in a variety of different places, whether it be our permitting services or transportation or the general fund, in order to maintain programs that might otherwise have been cut. So it's a little bit of a chicken or the egg thing in terms of the reimbursement goes, but it's not program specific necessarily. It's just we're pulling the programs that we think qualify best under the federal government program in order to maintain them under a revenue replacement scheme that the federal government put together.
Thank you.
Any further discussion before we adjourn? All right, well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, board members. Again, welcome, board member Culp, and staff. Thank you for your help.
Thank you.
And we will see you either in July or September. If there's anything in between, feel free to reach out to obviously FPDR staff or myself, and we'll try and figure out if there's something we can do to get you some more information.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We are adjourned.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Hope you feel
Bye,
better, Josh.
everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.